The job of the presidency requires you to have so much intellectual security that you can push out the job and rely on the 5,000 people that are working in the executive branch. If you don't do that, you'll wreak havoc on the system. You got to have somebody in a job like that that is smart enough to know that they may not know something, and they're smart enough to ask questions and be secure enough to tell somebody they actually don't know the answer to something. I can't tell you the name of the person because it's a high-profile person, but this person was trying to explain to Trump the difference between a Shia and a Sunni, and Trump was too intellectually insecure. He didn't want to listen. He was browbeating the guy because he didn't want the other people in the room to know that he didn't know the difference. Someone else brought up the Sykes-Picot Treaty, which was the treaty between the British and the French when they were evacuated from the Middle East during the First World War and the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. And this treaty, by and large, has created most of the problems that we see today in the Middle East. Trump didn't want to hear it. He was too insecure to hear the story. I write about it in the book, actually. I had to explain it to him by telling him a story about Lawrence of Arabia. I say, Mr. Trump, do you remember the movie Lawrence of Arabia? Oh, yeah, the movie with Peter O'Toole? Oh, it was a great movie. I said, do you remember what it was about? No. I said, well, let me tell you a little bit about the plot. Right? And that was a way of getting the information to him without making him feel bad that he didn't know the information. So, yeah, no, I learned a lot. It was incredibly humbling. And it was a great experience. I wouldn't take that experience away for anything because I got to see something that I wouldn't have gotten to see had I not done it. Are you glad that you got out as early as you did? So, Karen, if you're ever having a bad day, okay, Evan can send you my cell phone number. I'll call and share. Unless it's cancer, I can call and cheer you up because it can't be a worse day than the day I got fired. Okay, I got fired on July 31st, 2017. I was blown out the front door of Pennsylvania Avenue. I got skinned alive by the media pundits, and then I got rolled in margarita salt by the late night comedians. And then you haven't fully lived until you've been roasted and parodied on Saturday Night Live. Okay, so these were some brutal, humiliating events that happened. And so at the time, I was not glad that I got out as early as I did. I thought, okay, abysmal failure, ejected after 11 days in the White House. But today, upon reflection, Karen, I am glad. I almost feel like the universe saved me from an even bigger tragedy. Also, okay, my wife had filed for divorce on me. And so I just want you to imagine I'm getting fired from the White House, roasted by the American media, lit up on late night punditry, and my wife and I are fighting to the point where she's filed for divorce. Now she's Italian like me, so they move fast. Boom, we're going. Even though we love each other, we're going to divorce. So I had to leave that job and rebuild my marriage, and thankfully we were able to do that. And that requires, as you know, if you're in a relationship, you got to eat crow in a situation like that, and you got to get yourself going in the right direction. So I had to do all those things at that time. Stephanie's saying, what is the most proud thing in my life? I want to be cliche about this and say, oh, it's my 5 children, Stephanie. I want to be cliche about that. I'm going to say something different. I'm going to say showing up has been the most proud thing in my life. And what do I mean by that? In 1976, my father walked into the house. He slammed every door. I'm sure he broke a few plates. He slammed the kitchen cupboard. And what was happening? He was getting his hours cut back on his job. We were going through a recession. And my dad was an hourly worker. And so he got paid by the hours union. If the hours are getting cut, guess what happens? You get less disposable income at home. You were also we didn't have assets really. He owned his house, thank God, but we didn't really have assets. So when you're a blue collar in the country right now, you get the dollar, it comes in, you don't own assets. If they're going to inflate the dollar, well, the dollar comes in and then you only have 80 cents of purchasing power. The US dollar has devalued 22.5% since January of 2020. right? So I just want you to think about that for a second. If you're a laborer, that's killing you and your family. It's killing your living standards. In 1976, I looked around and said, okay, my parents need my help. I went and got a paper out. I got a work permit. I went to go work at the Key Food. I then worked at a motorcycle shop at night. And I was making about $60 a week. And I was giving $45 of that to my mother. And so the most proud moment for me is showing up. The most proud moment for me is that I have gotten gearbox. I'm going to be a provider. I got to help my family members. I got to make sure if kids are smart enough, they can get to college and get their tuition paid. Or God forbid, if there's a medical emergency and somebody doesn't have the right insurance, you got to be able to step in and help them. Because when you grow up in a blue collar family, if you want to do it right, you got to pull the people with you. You don't leave them in the dust. You pull the people with you. And so that's the thing I'm the most proud of. Okay, yes, my kids for sure, because I've shown up for them, but it's about showing up and saying, okay, what can I do responsibly to help as many people as possible? And by the way, that was the champ. Let's go back to the champ. Champ helped everybody. Okay, and he grew up in Kentucky. He was uneducated, smartest person you could ever meet, but uneducated, but he helped everybody. He was silently, anonymously giving money out to so many different people.